I built my empire with my own two hands. Well, technically, it was my father's company, but he was never the visionary. He ran it well enough to keep the lights on, but I was the one who turned a family business into a powerhouse. From the moment I took over, I transformed it into a $100 million enterprise. Every dollar earned was a testament to my relentless work ethic, my cunning, and my ability to outmaneuver everyone who thought they could stand in my way. Including her. Emily. My wife. The woman I thought was by my side, only to find out she was sharpening her knives behind my back. She had the perfect mask, the devoted, supportive wife. The one who kissed me at the door when I left for work, who played the doting hostess at my business events, who whispered that she was proud of me while I made deal after deal, stacking up our wealth. But the whole time, she was a viper, coiled and waiting for the right moment to strike. I should have seen it coming. The little lies. The gaslighting. The late nights with her friends. The way she suddenly had a password on her phone, a guarded look in her eyes when I asked about her day. But I was too busy, too focused on taking the company to the next level, to pay attention to the rotting foundation beneath our marriage. Then I found out. She was cheating. And not just cheating, she was planning to take everything from me. She wanted a divorce. But she didn't want to leave empty-handed. No, she wanted the house, the money, and even a stake in my company. She had spent months laying the groundwork, playing the victim, building a case that would paint me as the neglectful husband, the workaholic who didn't pay attention to his poor, lonely wife. And the worst part? She thought she could get away with it. I still remember the day I confronted her. She sat across from me at our marble kitchen island, sipping on her overpriced espresso like nothing was wrong, scrolling through her phone as if she wasn't about to stab me in the back. I placed the manila folder in front of her, evidence of her affair, her lies, her betrayal. Text messages, photos, receipts. A complete dossier of her treachery. Her face went pale, but she recovered quickly. "This is ridiculous," she scoffed, pushing the folder away like it was trash. "You were paranoid. None of that proves anything." She lied. Even when she was caught, she lied. "I know everything," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "Every single detail. Who, when, where. The hotel rooms. The late-night calls. Even the money you funneled into that secret account of yours. So why don't you save us both some time and admit it?" She sneered, crossing her arms. "You were insane. Maybe if you had paid more attention to me instead of your damn company, I wouldn't have needed to find attention elsewhere." And there it was. The excuse. The justification. I could have screamed. I could have thrown things, raged, given her the reaction she was hoping for. But I didn't. Because I had already decided, she wasn't going to win. She thought she could betray me and walk away with half of my empire? She thought she could play the wounded wife and take me to the cleaners? No. That wasn't going to happen. If she wanted war, I was going to give her one. But I wasn't going to fight it in court, like she expected. I wasn't going to let some judge decide my fate. No, I was going to take everything from her. Not just the money. Not just the house. I was going to dismantle her life piece by piece, until she had nothing left. And the best part? She wouldn't even see it coming. I didn't waste time. Emily had already laid the groundwork for my downfall, but she underestimated me. She thought she had me cornered, that I was just another fool blinded by love and too consumed with work to fight back. She thought she could dictate the terms of this war. She was wrong. I had spent years mastering the art of business, manipulating markets, reading people, controlling narratives. A divorce was just another hostile takeover, and she was an over-leveraged competitor who didn't know she was about to be wiped out. First, I needed to secure my assets. Emily thought she was entitled to half of everything, but she had no idea how deep my financial strategies ran. I called my lawyers, ones she didn't even know existed, and restructured everything overnight. The company? Moved into a trust she couldn't touch. The house? Technically, it belonged to a holding company now. My personal accounts? Liquidated and funneled into off-the-books investments. On paper, I was worth next to nothing. But that was just the beginning. I needed leverage. The kind of leverage that would not only destroy her case but make sure she walked away with nothing but regret. That's when I started playing dirty. I hired a private investigator, one of the best. Within a week, I had everything I needed. Emily wasn't just sleeping with some random nobody, she was having an affair with my company's chief financial officer. Oh, the irony. This was better than I had hoped. Not only was she screwing around behind my back, but she was doing it with a man who had access to my business. That gave me all the ammunition I needed to turn this into something far bigger than just a failed marriage. I set the trap carefully. One evening, I came home early. Emily was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone with that smug expression she always wore when she thought she had everything under control. "Hey, babe," I said casually, loosening my tie. "We need to talk." She barely looked up. "About what?" I pulled up a chair across from her, resting my elbows on my knees. "About your boyfriend." That got her attention. Her eyes flickered with something, fear, maybe? But she recovered quickly, rolling her eyes. "Not this again," she sighed, setting her phone down. "You are being paranoid. Seriously, this is embarrassing. If you spent half as much time focusing on me as you do on your conspiracy theories, maybe I wouldn't be so miserable in this marriage." I almost laughed. She was good. But I was better. I slid my phone across the table. "Go ahead," I said. "Read it." Her eyes narrowed as she picked up the phone. Then she saw the pictures. The messages. The hotel receipts. The timestamps. Every ounce of blood drained from her face. This isn't. "You were sleeping with my CFO, Emily," I said, my voice ice cold. "And if that wasn't bad enough, you're also complicit in corporate fraud." She looked up at me, pure panic setting in. What the hell are you talking about?" I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Your boyfriend? He's been embezzling from my company. And thanks to you, I have all the evidence I need to take you both down." It wasn't true, of course. Not yet. But she didn't know that. She thought she was the one controlling the board, but I had just moved my queen into position, and she had nowhere to go. "James would never." I cut her off with a smirk. "James? Oh, so we're admitting it now?" She clamped her mouth shut, realizing her mistake. I stood up, straightening my cuffs. "You have two choices, Emily. You can fight me in court, drag this out for months, maybe years, and watch as I expose everything. You'll walk away with nothing, your reputation in ruins, your little boyfriend rotting in jail while you scrape together enough money to afford a one-bedroom apartment in a city that forgets you exist." I paused, letting my words sink in. "Or, you can do the smart thing, sign the divorce papers I'll have delivered to you tomorrow. No alimony, no stake in the company, no house. You walk away clean. I let you keep your car and whatever cash is in your personal account, and we pretend this never happened." She was shaking. Her hands clenched into fists, her breathing uneven. But I could see it in her eyes, she knew she had lost. For the first time, she was the one trapped. And I wasn't finished yet. Emily was too proud to break down in front of me, but I could see the cracks forming. The panic in her eyes, the way she gripped the edge of the table, the way her throat tightened as she swallowed back the rage. She wanted to scream at me, throw something, fight back. But she couldn't. Not this time. I had all the power now, and she knew it. She tried to compose herself, flipping her hair over her shoulder and forcing out a scoff. "You were bluffing." I smiled. "Try me." She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood floors. "You think you can bully me into signing away my life? You think I'm just going to roll over and let you do this to me?" I took a slow step toward her, closing the distance. "I don't think, Emily. I know. Because you have no idea what I'm capable of." She held my gaze, trying to look defiant, but I could see it, the first flickers of doubt, the realization that she had pushed the wrong man too far. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. I let her go. She wasn't going to sign right away, that would be too easy. No, she'd try to fight it, try to spin her own story, find some loophole that would still get her what she wanted. But I was already 10 steps ahead. I spent the next 2 days putting the next phase of my plan into motion. First, I needed James, her boyfriend, my CFO, out of the picture. He was my real target. As long as he was around, he'd fuel her delusions that she could still win. So I made sure he couldn't. I set up a meeting with my board of directors. On the surface, it was just a routine company review. But by the time James walked into that conference room, he had already lost his career, he just didn't know it yet. I laid out the evidence. Not of his wrongdoing, because, technically, he hadn't done anything illegal. But I didn't need real evidence. I just needed to plant enough doubt to make him a liability, a few carefully placed financial discrepancies, a questionable expense report, a manipulated email thread that made it look like he was planning something shady. Nothing that could hold up in court, but enough to destroy his credibility. The board didn't hesitate. By the end of the meeting, James was out of a job. No severance, no recommendations. Just a ruined reputation and a security escort out of the building. I made sure Emily heard about it immediately. I was sitting in my home office when my phone rang. Her number flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice before answering. "Yes?" "You bastard!" she shrieked. "What the hell did you do to him?" I leaned back in my chair, completely calm. "You mean James? I had nothing to do with it. The board made their decision." "Bullshit!" she spat. "You set him up. You." "I warned you, Emily." My voice was cold, devoid of any emotion. "You didn't listen." She was breathing heavily on the other end. Then she switched tactics. "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "He has nothing now. You ruined him. You." I laughed. "I ruined him? No, Emily. You did that the moment you got into bed with him. You wanted to betray me? Fine. But did you really think I'd just let you walk away with my company, my money, and him?" Silence. She had no comeback. No defense. "I'll send the divorce papers tomorrow," I continued. "Sign them, and this all ends. You get to walk away. Try to fight me, and you'll end up just like James." I hung up before she could say another word. Let her sit with that. I had only just begun. Emily went quiet after that phone call. No screaming texts. No threats. No desperate attempts to negotiate. Just silence. I knew what she was doing. She was scrambling. She thought she could still find a way out, still find some loophole that would save her from the hell she had walked into. But I had already closed every door, locked every escape route. And I wasn't done. James was out of the company, his career in shambles, but I wanted more. I wanted Emily to feel the weight of true helplessness. So I went after her next. First, I cut off her access to all shared accounts. Credit cards? Cancelled. Joint bank accounts? Drained. The car she drove? Technically, it was leased under my company. That was repossessed before she even woke up the next morning. Within 24 hours, she had gone from living in a luxury estate with an unlimited spending limit to having nothing in her name. Then I made sure she had nowhere to run. I knew she had been planning to move in with James. She thought they'd build a new life together. That's what she was really counting on, the idea that, even if she lost the divorce, she still had him. But now, James was unemployed, broke, and drowning in rumors that he had been fired for corruption. And the final nail in the coffin? James wanted nothing to do with her. I knew that before she did. I had someone watching her, of course. A quiet little observer who made sure I knew exactly what Emily was doing at all times. And when she went to James' place that night, expecting comfort, expecting him to reassure her that they would still be okay, he slammed the door in her face. He wasn't about to risk what little he had left on a woman who was now more of a liability than an asset. And that's when Emily finally broke. I was in my office when I got the call. She was sobbing, her voice raw and desperate. "You took everything from me." I leaned back in my chair, completely calm. "No, Emily. You did that the moment you betrayed me." She sniffled, her breath shaky. "You win, okay? I'll sign the papers." I let the silence stretch for a moment, savoring it. Then, I gave her one final push. "Too late," I said simply. Her breath hitched. What? "You don't just get to walk away, Emily," I said, my voice like ice. "You wanted war. This is war. And I'm not done with you yet." She started sobbing again, but I didn't care. She had tried to ruin me. She had tried to take everything I built. She had played with my life like it was some game. And now, I was making sure she never forgot what it felt like to lose. Emily had finally reached the point of surrender. But surrender wasn't enough. I wanted her to suffer. She thought signing the divorce papers would be the end of it, that she could just cut her losses and move on. That she'd still have some dignity left. That maybe, just maybe, she could rebuild her life, even if it wasn't the life she had originally planned. But I wasn't giving her the chance. The next day, I sent over the papers, but they weren't the same ones she expected. The deal I had originally offered, walking away clean, keeping her car and personal cash, was gone. Instead, I made sure she walked away with nothing. Not a single dime. Not even her jewelry. Everything she had was either legally tied to me or suddenly buried under debt she didn't even know existed. I had been smart, far smarter than she had ever given me credit for. Over the years, I had made sure she had no real financial power. Her name was never on the major assets. Even her personal accounts had been padded with gifts from me, meaning that technically, they weren't hers in the eyes of the court. She called me within minutes of getting the paperwork. "You are insane," she hissed. "You can't do this." I smirked. I already did. She lost it. Screaming, cursing, threatening to go to court, to expose me for what I had done. So I gave her one final warning. "If you try to fight me, Emily, I'll release everything." She went quiet. She knew exactly what I was talking about. The evidence of her affair wasn't just for leverage, it was my insurance policy. She had built an image of herself as the perfect wife, the devoted socialite, the woman who played her role flawlessly in high society. If the world saw the truth, if those texts, those pictures, those recorded phone calls I had of her talking about how she was going to leave me once she drained me dry got out, she would be ruined. Not just financially. Not just socially. Completely. And she knew I wasn't bluffing. So, for the first time since this all started, she did the one thing I had been waiting for her to do. She begged. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Just. Please. Don't do this." I closed my eyes, taking in the moment. This was what I had been waiting for. Not just to win, but to see her truly, completely defeated. I let her sit in silence for a long time before finally responding. "Sign the papers, Emily." A choked sob. Then, a quiet, broken, "Okay." I hung up. It was done. But I still had one final move left to play. Because losing everything wasn't enough. I wanted to make sure she could never rebuild. Emily thought signing the papers was the end. That she had lost, that I had taken everything, and that now she could try, somehow, in some way, to crawl out of the wreckage of her own mistakes. But I wasn't done with her. Not yet. Taking her money, her security, her future wasn't enough. She had spent years living off my name, enjoying the respect that came with being my wife. Even if she walked away with nothing, she could still start over somewhere. I couldn't allow that. So, I made sure she never would. I had dirt on her. A lot of it. I had records of the money she siphoned into her secret account, money that wasn't hers to take. I had a full digital trail of her deception, her lies, her fraud. She didn't realize that half of what she did in preparation for the divorce was highly illegal. Identity theft. Bank fraud. Wire fraud. She had been so convinced she could outsmart me, so convinced I was too busy running my company to notice her little games, that she never once stopped to think that I was watching her the entire time. I sent a small file to my lawyer, a selective compilation of what I had on her. Just enough to raise questions. Then, I made one phone call. A friend. Someone with influence. Someone who could make sure those questions got asked in all the right places. And just like that, Emily's name was blacklisted. Not just in the business world. Not just socially. Everywhere. Bank accounts frozen. Pending investigations. Quiet whispers among the people she once called friends. Her entire reputation? Gone. And then, just to make sure she truly had nothing left, I dropped one final bombshell. James, the man she had betrayed me for? The one who had slammed the door in her face? I paid him a visit. Not in person, of course. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I let him think an anonymous tip had come his way. A fake job offer. A chance to rebuild, to leave behind the mess I had created for him. All he had to do was relocate. Start fresh. And because James was desperate, because he was stupid, he took the bait. I made sure Emily found out the moment his flight left. No job. No money. No James. She had no one. And when she called me again, this time completely shattered, sobbing, pleading, I didn't even answer. I just let it ring. And then I blocked her number. Emily was drowning. She had no money, no home, no career, and now, no James. The man she had thrown everything away for had disappeared, and she was left to rot in the ruins of her choices. But I wasn't done. She had spent years pretending to be better than me. Playing the perfect wife in public, wearing the mask of loyalty while stabbing me in the back. She had built her entire identity around being admired, respected, wanted. Now, I was going to make sure that when people looked at her, they saw nothing but disgrace. I leaked the affair. Not in a scandalous, explosive way that would make her infamous. No, I was smarter than that. I was precise. I made sure certain people found out first, key figures in our social circle, the people whose opinions mattered most to her. Old friends. Business partners. High society wives who had once envied her. I let them whisper behind her back, let them piece together the story themselves. The betrayal, the fraud, the fact that she had tried to destroy her own husband and had lost everything. She became a cautionary tale. A joke at private dinner parties. And when she finally tried to claw her way back into society, doors closed in her face. No invitations. No sympathy. Just cold, empty silence. She tried to move out of state. I blocked that too. I didn't have to touch her directly, I just had to make sure that no matter where she went, my shadow followed. Every time she tried to start over, something would go wrong. Jobs she applied for? Mysteriously rescinded. Apartments she inquired about? Suddenly no longer available. She thought she could escape me. She was wrong. The final straw came when I got a message from a mutual acquaintance. Apparently, Emily had been seen sleeping in her car. She was officially homeless. Perfect. I sat in my office that night, staring out over the city I had conquered, knowing that somewhere out there, Emily was alone. Cold. Broke. Completely destroyed. And then, for the first time since this all began, I smiled. She had tried to take everything from me. Instead, I had taken everything from her. Emily had nothing left. She was sleeping in her car, bouncing between cheap motels when she could scrape together enough cash from whatever temporary work she could find. The woman who once draped herself in designer clothes, who used to look down on people who worked for a living, was now barely surviving. But I wasn't done. She had taken my love, my trust, and tried to steal my life. That wasn't something I could forgive. It wasn't something I could let her recover from. So, I gave her a choice. I had someone reach out to her, a lawyer she didn't recognize, someone she wouldn't immediately tie back to me. He approached her as if he were acting out of pity, out of kindness. And he offered her a deal. A one-time opportunity, he told her. To start over. A way out of this mess. Emily, desperate and stupid, took the bait. She met with him at a small coffee shop outside of town, wearing the same clothes I had seen her in a week earlier. Her hair was unkempt, her nails unpolished. This was not the Emily I had married. This was a ghost, a broken remnant of the woman who once thought she could ruin me. She sat across from the lawyer, clinging to her cup of coffee like it was the last thing keeping her alive. "What's the deal?" she asked, her voice hoarse. He slid a contract across the table. "You sign this, and you get enough money to disappear." She stared at the document, hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. It was all there in black and white. A financial settlement, just enough to buy herself a new life. A small home somewhere far away, enough money to get back on her feet. But there was a catch. A big one. If she signed, she would be agreeing to permanently leave the state. She would never contact me again. Never show her face in any of the places we used to be. Never return. More than that, she would have to sign a legally binding admission of everything. Her affair. Her fraud. The fact that she had tried to manipulate the divorce in her favor. It was an official confession. The moment she signed that paper, she was admitting to everything she had done, with no way to ever twist the story in her favor again. She hesitated. She must have realized, in that moment, what I had done. That this was my final move. That if she signed this, her life as she knew it was over. I need to think about it," she whispered. The lawyer just smiled. "You don't have time to think. The offer expires tonight." She was trapped. And she knew it. She had no future here. No allies. No money. This was her only way out. And so, after sitting there for nearly an hour, staring at the contract, probably thinking about every mistake that had led her to this moment, she picked up the pen. And she signed. Emily signed her own death warrant that night. Not a literal one, I wasn't that kind of monster. But in the world she once thrived in, the world of wealth, influence, and status, she was already a ghost. The moment her pen touched the paper, she ceased to exist. I had my lawyer file the documents immediately. Within hours, her confession was legally binding. She couldn't take it back. She couldn't rewrite the story. She couldn't play the victim anymore. Her fate was sealed. She took the money, just enough for a one-way ticket out of my world, and disappeared. I didn't care where she went. I only cared that she was gone. But I had one last gift for her. A reminder. The day after she left, I sent her a package. No return address, no message. Just a plain, unmarked envelope. Inside was a single photograph. Our wedding day. The moment where she had stood beside me, smiling, believing she had won the jackpot. And written across the image in red ink, just 2 words. Checkmate. She never responded. She couldn't. She was nothing now. Just another forgotten face in a city that had already moved on. I leaned back in my chair that night, staring out over the skyline, the weight of everything finally lifting off my shoulders. It was over. I had destroyed the woman who tried to destroy me. And I had won. For the first time in months, I woke up with peace. Emily was gone. Out of my life. Out of my city. Out of existence as far as I was concerned. I had reduced her to nothing, made sure she could never crawl back, never rebuild, never rewrite the past to make herself the victim. The people who once admired her now pitied or ignored her. The people who once envied her name had already forgotten it. And me? I was untouchable. I went back to my company like nothing had happened. My employees, my board members, my business partners, they all knew something had gone down, but no one dared to ask. All they saw was a man who had emerged from his divorce stronger than before. In fact, my business had never been better. James was gone, replaced with someone who actually earned his position. The dead weight was cut. Morale was high. Investors were eager to pour more money into the empire I had built, now that the distraction of my failed marriage was no longer looming over me. It was poetic. Emily had once believed she could take from me, my wealth, my success, my power. Instead, she had gifted me the greatest advantage I could have asked for. Freedom. And I intended to enjoy it. I spent the next few weeks traveling, taking meetings in different cities, reconnecting with my world on my own terms. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was thriving. One night, while in New York for a business deal, I found myself at a private gala, sipping whiskey, listening to men worth billions discuss the future of industries I had a stake in. And that's when I saw her. Not Emily. Someone better. She was standing across the room, talking to an investor I had worked with before. Confident. Sharp. Beautiful. The kind of woman who commanded a space, not because she demanded attention, but because people naturally gravitated toward her. Our eyes met. And she smiled. It was in that moment I realized something. Emily had never been a loss. She had been a lesson. And now, I was ready to move forward. On my terms.